Hi everybody, how are you doing? This is Amanda. I do hope that you're well. I'm going to talk a little bit about channeling today and the cycle of life and death and the importance of respecting a soul when they transition to spirit. This has come in on the back of an email that I received last night, and I copied the reply to that email on Facebook and Instagram last night. And I've slept on it, and I've realised that in hindsight, there maybe is a lack of understanding out there in some, no judgment, with regards to what the soul needs when it passes over, and our right to hear from them quickly because we're interested in what a famous celebrity, for example, or person has to say just after they've died, and how difficult it is to navigate this as a channeler. Those of you that might just be stumbling on this video, yes, I class myself as a channeler, a medium. I've done many videos where I have been able to connect into souls that have passed to spirit. Most of them are on a playlist called Heart Squad, although they're not all there. I've done other work with the likes of Nikola Tesla, which was the last video on YouTube, Margaret Thatcher, a few that don't fit into neat boxes of what I would term Heart Squad, although of course we all are of the heart energy. We all have a heart that beats within us, and that beat carries on actually after we die. So let me talk about why I'm talking about this today. Last night, I received an email from one of you, I think quite excited, wanting to show me a video that's out there of somebody that is supposedly channeling Queen Elizabeth. Probably less than, well, it's certainly less than a month since she died. Weeks, basically. Only a couple of weeks since she's been buried. And I guess you wanted my opinion in terms of what do I think. So I'm going to tell you what I think. But actually, I would like this to be a teaching moment, because in retrospect, my reply last night was maybe a little bit short. And I think it's because in hindsight, I assumed that some of what I want to talk about and teach in this video is known by everybody. And I don't think it is. So this is my understanding of the process of life and death and what happens after we die and the interim period, and then how we can maybe channel somebody after they have gone through that process, but not usually before. And certainly for somebody like the Queen to be channeled so quickly, I've got two very raised eyebrows. Big question marks in terms of what they are actually channeling. Metatron actually, before I get to the whole life, death and transition thing, Metatron gave me a beautiful analogy this morning, which is that it doesn't mean that the people doing it have got ill intent. They may very well be thinking that they are channeling the Queen. But he says there's a difference between speaking on behalf of somebody, which is basically when that soul energy turns up in pretty much close to a full embodiment energy and allows you to speak on their behalf, or uses your vessel, more to the point, to speak on their behalf. So you have the energy of the full embodiment of that soul at that particular time. Because remember, of course, many souls have got many different lives, past lives, future lives, etc. And the channeler taps into that particular incarnation. So, for example, somebody like the Queen would step forward as Queen Elizabeth II. Her energy of herself in that lifetime, so you can identify her. A channeler can then speak on behalf of her. That is basically channeling. What I think is happening with some of these other people that are so quick off the mark and thinking that they've already got her, because I don't believe they have for reasons that I'll say in a moment, is that they are channeling the energy around a particular situation, a particular event, or a particular person. But they aren't actually channeling the full embodiment of that energy. Metatron's giving me the example of a building. Okay, good example actually, Metatron, because we often there's an analogy that's often given of the human body, which is that the physical body is the temple, the physical body is, you know, is the house in which we live. So a channeler that is just reading the energy around something is basically just it's like they're walking around the building. They're being able to see, you know, what it looks like. They're getting a vibration off it because the actual soul resides within that building, but they're not talking to the actual soul. They're talking to the outer face of it. Am I making sense? Okay, so the channeler that's really channeling is actually not just in the building, they are the building. Not just the bricks and the mortar and the windows, they're actually the very essence of the spirit that resides within that building. It's a crucial difference, because I think what's happening out there is that people are just reading the energy around a person. You could read the energy around me now. You might, you know, if you wanted to, you can pick up different things that might be going on, etc. But you're not able to speak on my behalf because I'm not allowing you in all to the whole essence of who I am. I'm not allowing you into my heart essence. I'm not allowing you into my soul energy because my boundaries are there. Somebody like the Queen, we'll talk about what happens after somebody dies anyway, which also precludes channeling the true essence of a person and being able to speak on their behalf. But the Queen lived her whole life when she was alive with her walls up. She lived behind great big palace walls and castles with moats, with drawbridges, with guards that watched her 24/7, including when she slept. A very protected energy, a very protected person. Despite her public persona and everything that she did in her life, who she was privately was something that only her family really knew. In the same way that your essence, your true essence, if I was to speak on behalf of you, which I can't do anyway without your permission, it would be very hard unless I had fully embodied that energy and you had allowed me in. So let's start from the premise that people are already channeling her and that she's done a 360-degree turnaround. All of her defenses are now down. Anybody can tap in who happens to have the gift or the skill to be able to connect with spirit. And she's just pouring her heart out in a way that she never did in her life. The thing about souls when they pass over, which is you and me, is that I think there's a misconception out there that suddenly we just... Put it this way, if you go and see a medium and you're wanting to connect to your mum, your dad, you're wanting some guidance, and there's often a wrong perception that they're going to come through with the absolute golden nugget of truth that you need to hear right now that's going to help you on your path. Whereas actually they're going to come through as your mum and dad, as they were when they were alive. Yes, they will have gone through healing and have a higher frequency because of where they are now. They're not confined within a body. but they're still going to be mum and dad with their little quirks and their little things that, idiosyncrasies. For example, somebody that's been maybe a very staunch Catholic in life will pass to the other side, will open up to all of the other opportunities, let's put it that way, and ways of expressing universal love and what God is. They'll be open to all of that. But for want of a better word, and I don't wish to be rude here, it's the only word I can think of, but for want of the dogma that they've had in this life, Metatron's showing it like quite a heavy cloak and a heavy coat and a heavy vest that they still sometimes grip very tightly to themselves. And Spirit will gently try and take that off and say, you don't need that identity anymore. You can keep it if you want to, but you don't have to have it. You could also try on this, you could try on that. But in the early days of transition, and by that I'm talking years actually, because remember, our souls are infinite. You might live like the Queen did to be 93 or whatever she was, a long life, but that is so tiny. It's such a tiny portion of who you actually are as a soul. Tiny, tiny, tiny. So we have all the time in the world as souls when we transition to shift our perspectives, to change, to see things from a different perspective. It doesn't all just come in a blinding flash of light and suddenly we know it all as spirit and we're enlightened and we have all the answers. So your mum and dad will still come through as your mum and dad, hopefully with a few pearls of wisdom, but they'll still have, as I say, those things that you identified them as being like when they were human beings. So the Queen, as an example, a very private woman, not allowing people into that inner sanctum, walls sky high, is not going to come through to any YouTuber within a couple of weeks of her passing. That's sort of what I was feeling last night. So I was a little bit like, I didn't understand why people couldn't see that. But now let me talk about the other aspect to this, which is what happens when we die. Somebody said, how are you so certain she's not talking to these YouTubers? Good question, and I'd like to try and answer it now as best as I can. My understanding of what happens after we die is that there are 3 things in particular that happen. Number 1, there is a life review, which happens for all souls, whoever you are. We all have a life review. You will have different interpretations of what that might look like. Some of you might remember it happening in a previous lifetime or the transition between lives. But we have a life review. We are able to look at the ramifications of how we've behaved, what we've done, the good we've done, the bad we've done, all of it gets reviewed. We see things through other people's eyes. We see it from a higher perspective. We also have a look at the soul contracts that we came in with, what we were actually, why we bothered to come in the first place to Earth. It's a school at the end of the day. What were we there to teach? What were we there to learn? How well did we do? I guess we also get guidance from Spirit, God, angels, whoever's around you. We're comforted, we're supported. So number 1, there's this big life review based on soul contract, based on what we've done, etc. That isn't something that just happens in 5 minutes. It's said that when we die, we see almost like the screen of our life, like a movie screen, goes very fast in front of us and we see everything that we've done. And I believe that to be true. But then I also feel there is this longer life review that can take a long time. And it can also be that we might look at different parts of our life and we get stuck on something. We hadn't actually fully realised, my gosh, when I did that, that actually really hurt that person. I hadn't realised that. And we might sit with that for a long time. So life review happens after somebody dies. The other thing that happens is healing. And I remember this particularly when I did the channeling with Michael Jackson, and I looked at his transition to spirit. And what has always stayed with me is that he needed a very long time in what was shown a bit like a hospital ward, for want of a better description, but it was a spiritual hospital ward because of all of the things that had happened to him in his life. His body was very battered and weakened and deprived of light source, not because he was a dark being, but because he was just somebody which the establishment had tried to squash and squash and squash. And he arrived at the pearly gates, for want of a better word, very diminished. And so he spent a long time in the healing chambers, a long time in that healing space. Most of us will require some degree of healing when we cross over. Imagine people that you know and might have loved, who you've lost to very long illnesses, and you see how weakened they are at the end. Even somebody who dies quite peacefully in their sleep when they're older, especially in their 90s, their body is weakened. Of course it is, because life here on Earth is a very dense planet and it takes a lot out of us. So all of us have to go through a period of healing, and that happens quite quickly after we transition. I'm being shown now, and I'm sure there's many ways this can happen, but because I have such a strong angelic frequency, it's the ray that I came in on, I'm being shown being scooped up in angel wings, okay? So those of us that maybe very strongly identify with the angels, it may very well be that an angel is there to greet us, and the angel scoops us up and it takes us away, and I'm feeling as though it puts us to its breast. And it's a very, maybe that's for somebody who needs a lot of maternal energy, a lot of nurturing, a lot of nourishing post-death, okay? So that's happening, and it's intense, and it's the most profound and beautiful thing. It's not something that any soul gets dragged to. Willingly, they want to go through this period of healing. And it's also tied in with the period of life review. So these are critical, crucial aspects of transition from being alive 1 minute on this planet to being spirit and free. But you have to go through these processes. The third thing that happens after we die and we transition is that we are just overwhelmed with the energy of complete and utter bliss and peace and stillness. Speechless. The energy of sublime love, unconditional love, peace beyond understanding, transcendence of human suffering. If you've been very disabled, you haven't been able to walk, shortly before you die. Many people suffer all sorts of illness and pain, particularly in older age, before they die. All of that is lifted from the body. There is just this feeling of, relief and peace and acceptance that I am here now and all is well. So in those sacred first few weeks, remember, you've got months, you've got years, you've got eons to experience this beauty. But in those first precious moments, those first precious weeks, where you're undergoing all of this intensity, life review, healing, the experience of just love, 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 do we really think that people, souls, are going to be rushing back to talk to a YouTuber. That's why I was just beyond it last night. I can't believe that people are thinking this is real. And I realise what I'm saying here because I'm very easy to attack. Very easy to attack at this point. Because I am a medium. Because I am a channeler. Okay? What do I do if Queen Elizabeth turns up in my bedroom tonight and then I have to come back and... Yeah, I'll come back and I'll tell you about it. But I'm not anticipating that she will. Absolutely not, because I know that her soul is going through all of what I've just described. Why would she want to? Having lived a life of service for 70 years, do you not think that she might be quite pleased and happy to actually just have the silence? The reunion, the other thing that happens, of course, is the reunion with souls that we've loved in this lifetime, that we lost. So for Elizabeth, yeah, it's her husband of God knows how many years, her mother, her father, her beloved sister, all of her pets that she loved that died. Do you really think that she's wanting to drag herself away from that to sit and talk to somebody on YouTube? I realise that, again, this is a message that will make me deeply unpopular with some people. But I have to be true to what I really feel. The people that I've channeled, the souls that I've channeled, have all been after this period has happened. I've never channeled anybody really close to their passing. There was one last year where I felt the energy of the building rather than the soul. So remember I was telling you about the difference between different types of channeling. So I could feel the energy of the exterior facade and the building and the event. I could feel the energy of that and I could read on that. I could pull some cards on that. But I wasn't actually tapping into his energy. It wasn't inside his energy to be able to speak on his behalf. And that was Taylor Hawkins, who died. And it was interesting, actually, because it coincided with when I got COVID. Ridiculous that we have to keep spelling it out so my channel doesn't get flagged. But anyway, it was when I got that, I think, or maybe I was just unwell. But I wasn't well enough to bring through what I was getting. But in hindsight, it wasn't him I was tapping into. Well, it was. I was tapping into the energy around the situation. Can you see it's very different from me coming on and saying, I've got Taylor Hawkins here and he is saying this, okay? As opposed to, let's just read on the energy around him. Can you feel the difference? It's a critical difference. So I think this is what's happening a lot when people are saying, I've got, for example, Queen Elizabeth. She's back within 2 weeks, within 3 weeks, within 4 weeks. No, you're just reading the energy around it. You haven't got her. You're not speaking on her behalf. I don't think. I'm willing to stand corrected, but I don't think so. Because it feels as though it contravenes all of what I've just discussed, which I believe to be true. Life review, healing, the energy of being in peace beyond understanding, love beyond understanding, reunion with family members that we haven't seen maybe for decades. You're not going to be dragging yourself off to explain yourself, to say something else, particularly in a life where, if you look at somebody like her, 70 years public service, she said what she wanted to say. She had done, the soul contract was complete. The soul contract was complete. And then you see we have to look at our energy in terms of what we expect. Again, I'm not judging anybody here. I'm trying to use this as a teaching moment, and I hope it's landing in the way and the spirit in which I'm doing it, which is from my heart, because I genuinely care about my, I don't know what to call it. What do you call it? Industry? That's not the right word, is it? You know, when people behave in ways and I have like big question marks, it taints me as well as a channeler. It taints me as a medium. And those of us that do this type of work, we have fought like dogs, you know, cats and dogs, to basically get this work more out into the mainstream. It's not believed by lots of people anyway, even those of us that are working from a place of real authenticity and trying our best and observing the spiritual laws, observing a period of respect and consideration for every soul that's passed, thinking before we open our mouth, before we switch on the video camera. It's giving us all a bad name. So, you know, I'm not saying that it's impossible. I know. Okay, Metatron's just let me pause here. He's wanting me to make a distinction. Hold on a minute. Is it possible that they come through so quickly? Right, what he's saying to me, this is really important. He's saying for a soul to come through very quickly, to be channeled, there's a difference between in public and in private. In private, it can happen, but it's more like a sacred moment. And it usually happens with people who have known that person. So the Queen, if she was going to be coming through to anybody, making her presence felt, it would be to her family. It would be to somebody she had a close connection with. You might have experienced this in your own life. People that pass over that we love, absolutely. There are thousands of stories of, oh my God, you know, my mother passed and I can feel her presence and I can feel she's saying something to me. Yes, yes, yes. That's a private connection. It's not public. There's a difference, Metatron's saying, between private and public. And then we get into the energy of, but why would you want to make it public? So, for example, somebody like the Queen. I mean, this is a really gross analogy, but Metatron is giving it to me, so I'm going to say it, because he's quite tough love and blunt. A bit like me, really. It's not a very nice analogy, Metatron, but he's saying give it, because it's the best one that's going to make people realise, okay, he's showing me the energy of a hunt. And he's showing me she's like the biggest scalp, it's a horrible way to put it, to get. That wasn't his Metatron's words. It's just the way I'm trying to express the energy that I'm feeling, what he's showing me. He's showing me that in regards to mediums, for example, and channelers, she's the biggest game that could be got at the moment. She's the biggest name. She's the biggest net to land. I'm channeling Queen Elizabeth. Let me tell you what she has to say. Okay, it's ego. It's coming from a place of ego. It's coming from a place of, I've landed the biggest fish. Just think about that. Do you believe that's true? I do. I really do. I've landed the biggest fish. And I'm going to tell you what this fish wants to say. It just doesn't work like that in spirit, because she's free. She's going to come if she wants to come. And she's going to come to somebody who's got an authentic... She's just going to come to the right person, is what I want to say. But it might not be for years. It could be tomorrow. But I don't think it's yet. And I don't think it's going to be tomorrow either. She's the Queen who built up the fortress. It's going to take a while for those walls to come down. Okay. Also just want to say something about the Rainbow Bridge. Those of you that have seen me do mediumship work, connecting to souls, I've often used the analogy of the Rainbow Bridge. And in my early days of doing channeling, what I used to do was I used to take us through a technique whereby the Rainbow Bridge was here, we were here, the spirit that wanted to connect with us was here. And then Metatron put, do you remember, a bench in the middle of the Rainbow Bridge? And we would walk towards it, and we would wait for whoever wanted to connect to us to come to the bench, sit with us. Metatron was usually on that bench with us, and then the conversation would begin, overseen by Archangel Metatron. Again, this is a really important point as well. Overseen by a very high frequency energy. Okay, so if a medium or a channeler isn't working with a very high frequency being like Christ, Metatron, somebody like that, that's always a bit of a red flag to me as well. But then again, some people are channeling Metatron who aren't channeling him, so we're getting into really sticky waters here. But let's not go there on this video. Let's just go to the energy of the Rainbow Bridge. What I'm being shown today with regard to somebody like the Queen, for example, coming through so quickly, although she hasn't, is I'm being shown she's gone over the Rainbow Bridge, right? We're here, she's over the bridge, okay? Okay, it's interesting. Metatron's saying the bridge doesn't even really come down until it's ready, which is interesting because we always think the bridge is always open, the bridge is always there. Yes, to a degree, that's true. But in the initial space where a soul has just passed, there often is a neediness on behalf of the ones who are left, who's like, I want to hear what she has to say. I want her to explain. I want to hear the next chapter. And it's like the bridge, that's coming from the wrong vibration, because the bridge operates on a vibration of very high frequency. So it's almost like you deem it's still there, but it's almost like an energy of neediness or victimhood, or can dematerialize the bridge is what I'm hearing. Okay. Metatron's also giving the example of the bridge being swept. I'm seeing the fact that she passed, and then it's like the bridge is being swept. The bridge is being swept. You're not meant to be walking on it at the moment. It's almost like wet paint. Wet paint. You're not meant to go there. It's just, that's what I'm being shown. I'm just telling you what I'm being shown. The bridge is being swept. Okay. And also I'm being given the analogy of, this is an interesting analogy. She did love animals at the end of the day. What's it called? Greyhound racing. Maybe this is just a UK thing, but in greyhound racing, or even horse racing, I suppose, there's that thing where the horses or the greyhounds are in, not a trap, but you know, they're in their little bit before they start to race, and they're held back. They're held back because the race hasn't begun yet. The communication hasn't begun yet. So it's as though for meeting in the middle of the Rainbow Bridge to happen, they have to be let out. They have to be let out to come into the centre, as do we. It's not that they're trapped, because they're in, whatever you want to call it, heaven, universal love, whatever it is you believe in, they're free. It's not like anyone's holding them against their will. It's more the fact that I think this is the healing phase that I'm tapping into, because I'm being shown, again, like in a healing bed, in a healing space. It's like if you go into a hospital in any country, they don't let you out until you're actually well and healthy and ready to face the world again. So again, remember, when you're in spirit, you're in such a higher frequency. For any soul to come back and talk to us, it's a bit of a downer, to be perfectly honest. What I mean by that is the frequency is lower here. However high we try to create it, and we can try and make a nice space and flowers and all the rest of it, and that's what we try and do, isn't it, as mediums, as channelers. But it's still a lower frequency space than where they're coming from. Again, I'm tapping into the energy of somebody like George Harrison, who I channeled, I don't know, a couple of years ago. Prince would be similar. David Bowie also, a lot of them. I mean, I just remember, I think with George Harrison, wasn't he levitating or something? And Prince was levitating. It was all, there's this energy of having to calm down, just because there's a frequency difference. So why would, for example, somebody like the Queen, who's only just transitioned and she's got all that lovely stuff going on, because no, she's not in hell, she's in heaven. That's where we all go. There's no hell. Hell is just separation between God and... Anyway, let's not get into all that. That's the subject for another day. I'm just feeling as though we need to understand that for them to come back is actually... It's an act of service, for one thing. The channelings that I've done have all been... I've tried to make it about teaching something, you know, rather than just the gossipy stuff. I'm not really into that. I was thinking today about one of the channelings I did with Ellis, I think it was. And I don't know, I think it was one of the first videos, and it was linked into... He was talking about the body and how the body ages and how the body changes. And he said something, because obviously when he died, his body was very broken, very bloated, very fat, very unhealthy, you know. Didn't he die sitting on the toilet or something like that? Very undignified. Bless his heart. I love Elvis's energy. So he would absolutely have had a period in the healing hospital, you know, the heavenly healing hospital. But I always remember the depth of the wisdom that he came in with. But there's also this about the body, and you know, I really resonate with that at the moment. Not that I'm saying I'm like Elvis Presley or anything like that, but just the process of getting older. He was like coming from a place of such wisdom, which is, as a soul, my God, you know, yeah, I didn't realise bodies did that, and they got grey and they got wrinkly and they got this and they got that, and it's like he was a bit grossed out by it, actually, because he just was. You have to watch the video back. It was a beautiful channeling. But that's what I'm really trying to say. They come back as an act of service. I believe. I believe that's what happens. So channelers that are coming and it's just the real gossipy stuff. Why would a soul want to come back and just gossip? I mean, maybe unless there'd been a big gossip in life, I suppose. Back to my point at the beginning, that you're still mum and dad, you're still who you were. Maybe if you did have a very gossipy soul, you know, person, and they still want to do that. But most of them, I don't think they do. They want to come back and they want to share some truths. But only after they've done their life review, their period of healing, and they are able to effectively tear themselves away from that beautiful energy that's up there. That's what I have to say. So I'm not wanting to diss other people's work, but I am feeling as though I just have to stand up a little bit for my profession and what I do, because I do think there's a lot of people who are I can't really show this card very much because it's a prototype deck that I might be putting my name to, but I'm just going to say there's a card here which is vulture. Okay, vulture. It's as though there are some vultures out there, and I don't believe that people realise that they're behaving like that, but I think death can attract the glory hunters, is what Metatron's saying. That's a much better way. Not scalp hunters, that was my word. Glory hunters is what Metatron's saying. Yeah, much better. And that's a human construct. That's a human construct. Okay, just watch out for it. Are you able to have a form of connection with, for example, somebody like the Queen, or somebody, you know, anybody famous, for example, if they passed over? Yes, you can, and it can happen quickly, but there's a difference between that and doing it publicly for money, you know. And I still feel as though with her defences are just going to take a while to come back down. Plus the fact she was a very, she had a strong Christian faith. So we're back to, she wasn't a Catholic, it was Anglican, but it takes a while to derobe of what you've been. And there's a lot within, you know, traditional Christianity. I know very well what I'm talking about here. You know, that they judge people like myself, mediums, very suspicious, don't believe any of that. Charles would be maybe a little bit different if, you know, he were to pass, not that we're wishing that in, but, you know, because he's probably more into this sort of stuff, but no, the Queen, not anytime soon, I don't think. Okay, that's my message today. I hope the teaching within it has helped or been interesting. I send you lots of love. Bye-bye for now. Bye.